Hey there, coin collectors. You won't believe what we've got in store today. Some Washington quarters that seem like pocket change could actually be worth thousands, even tens of thousands. From the 1980s all the way back to the 1960s, these coins are hiding serious value. Let's jump into the top 5 most valuable Washington quarters, and trust me, you're going to want to see these. The Washington quarter has been around for a long time, since 1932, to be exact. It was introduced to honor George Washington's 200th birthday, and ever since, it's been a staple of U.S. currency. Over the years, the coin has seen its fair share of design changes, but one thing has stayed the same, that iconic eagle on the back of the coin. But there's one particular quarter from the 1980s that's especially worth paying attention to, the 1983 P Washington quarter. Why does the 1983 P quarter stand out? Well, first of all, it was minted in Philadelphia, and that's where the P mintmark comes from. But it's not just the mintmark that makes this coin special, it's the errors that happened during its production. While most coins are pretty straightforward, this one has a few imperfections that make it unique and super attractive to collectors. Some of the most notable errors in the 1983 P quarter are things like double dies and die cracks. Double dies happen when the coin gets struck by the die more than once, causing certain parts of the design to appear doubled, so you might see doubled letters or numbers. Die cracks happen when cracks form on the die itself, and when that die strikes the coin, those cracks get transferred to the coin's surface. Both of these types of errors are pretty rare, which is exactly why collectors love them. So, what about the value of these quarters? Well, the regular 1983 P quarter is only worth face value, 25 cents. But if you've got one that's in great condition, or has one of those rare errors, it could be worth a whole lot more. For example, a 1983 P quarter in near-perfect condition, graded at MS65, sold for a crazy $15,863 at an auction in 2014. That's a pretty solid return for a quarter at most people would just toss in their pockets without a second thought. If you come across a 1983 P quarter, it's worth checking it out closely. Look for signs of those minting errors, like doubled letters or cracks running through the design. Even if it's not perfect, a coin with those errors could still have more value than a regular, error-free quarter. If you find something that looks like it might be a rare find, getting it professionally graded could help you figure out how much it's really worth. The more pristine the coin, the more valuable it is, especially if it has one of those cool errors. But even a less-than-perfect 1983 P quarter with a noticeable mistake could be worth something to collectors. The 1983 P Washington quarter is a great example of how a mix of history, rarity, and just a little bit of luck can turn a simple coin into something worth keeping an eye on. So whether you're an experienced coin collector or just someone who enjoys a good find, this quarter is definitely worth paying attention to. The 1978 D Washington quarter might seem like a pretty standard coin from the late 70s, but it has a fascinating backstory that's caught the attention of collectors, and for good reason. If you're a coin collector, or even just someone with an interest in unique currency, you'll want to hear about this one. The Washington quarter has been a staple of U.S. coinage since 1932, designed to honor George Washington's 200th birthday. Over the years, we've seen different versions of this coin, but in 1978, things were a little different than usual. For starters, by 1978, the quarter had long since moved away from its silver content. Since 1965, it's been made from a copper-nickel-clad composition, but it still carries that iconic Washington portrait on the obverse. In 1978, quarters were being minted at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, but today, we're zooming in on the 1978 D Washington quarter. The D stands for the Denver Mint, and while the coin might look pretty ordinary at first glance, there's actually something pretty special about it, especially if it's been graded as high as MS68. Now, you might be wondering, what's MS68? Well, MS stands for mint state, which means the coin was struck in flawless condition. A grade of 68 is extremely high in the world of coin grading, it's close to perfect. This means the coin has virtually no imperfections visible to the naked eye. In fact, coins with a grade like this are in such good shape that they can be worth thousands of dollars more than a typical coin in average circulation. To give you an idea of the rarity, in 2021, a 1978 D Washington quarter that was graded MS-68 sold for a staggering $32,400. Can you imagine holding a quarter worth that much? It's all about rarity and condition. Most of the 1978 D Washington quarters were produced in large numbers, so finding one that's in pristine condition is like finding a needle in a haystack. That's why collectors are so willing to pay top dollar for these perfectly preserved coins. But it's not just about the grade, there's also something about the historical significance. The 1970s were a time of economic change in the U.S. with rising inflation and a shift away from silver in most coins. So, the 1978 D Washington quarter represents a moment in U.S. history where the country was transitioning both economically and in terms of coin production. Of course, beyond just the high grade, some Washington quarters, like other coins, can have minting errors that make them even more valuable. Errors such as double strikes, die cracks, or misaligned dies can add even more value to the coin. So if you have any 1978 D quarters lying around, it might be worth checking for any errors that could make it even rarer. The Washington quarter has been a part of American currency since 1932, made to celebrate George Washington's 200th birthday. His face has graced the quarter for decades, and over the years, there have been plenty of different versions. Today, though, we're diving into the 1970 D Washington quarter. Now, if you see the D on a 1970 Washington quarter, it's a sign that it was minted in Denver. But the mint mark isn't the only thing that makes this coin interesting. There's a lot more to it, including history, a rare mistake, and a bit of luck that has made these quarters worth way more than their face value. In 1970, the U.S. was going through a lot of changes. Inflation was a concern, and the government started pulling silver out of coins. Prior to 1965, quarters were made with 90% silver, but by 1970, the quarter was composed of just copper and nickel. Even so, the Washington quarter still held its place in U.S. currency, albeit with a different metal mix. But here's the kicker, some of the 1970 D quarters were struck with a die that was misaligned. This caused double and even triple strikes on the image, a production error that can make a coin much more valuable. These kinds of die errors are rare, and back in 1970, no one really paid much attention to them. But today, collectors hunt down coins with these flaws because they're so hard to find. Fast forward to June 2024, when a 1970 D Washington quarter with this kind of die error sold for an eye-popping $40,000 at auction. Imagine that, a quarter that was originally worth 25 cents now fetching tens of thousands of dollars. The reason behind this price tag? Simple. Rarity and demand. There just aren't many of these coins out there, especially ones in such great condition, so collectors are willing to pay big money for them. What does this teach us? Well, it shows just how full of surprises the world of coin collecting can be. If you're a collector, or even if you're just someone with a jar of change at home, keep an eye out for coins that might have mistakes like this. You never know when you could find something worth way more than you expected. The 1970 D Washington quarter is a perfect example of how a small mistake in the minting process can turn an everyday coin into something rare and valuable. Whether you're an experienced collector or just starting to explore the hobby, always check your coins closely. That small error could be the next big find. Sometimes, the most valuable coins are the ones that were never meant to be. So, keep looking, you might just have a gem in your pocket. The 1969 Washington quarter might not be the first coin that comes to mind when you think of rare finds, but it's one that has quietly gained attention in the coin collecting world over the last 14 years. You may be surprised to hear that this quarter has sold for anywhere from just $6 to an impressive $5,906, depending on its condition and grade. Let's take a closer look at why this coin has captured the interest of collectors and why its value has fluctuated so much. First, let's take a trip back to 1969. This was a year of change in the U.S. The country was embroiled in the Vietnam War, while the Apollo 11 mission was making headlines with the first manned moon landing. The Washington Quarter, featuring George Washington's portrait on the obverse and an eagle on the reverse, had been in circulation since 1932, and it was still made of 90% silver back in 1969. Silver was phased out in later years, so the 1969 quarter holds some historical significance in terms of U.S. coinage. However, what makes the 1969 Washington Quarter stand out in the world of coin collecting today isn't just its history, but its condition. The coin was minted in large numbers, but as with all coins, some are just in better shape than others. This is where the grading system comes into play. Coins are graded based on their appearance, from the sharpness of their details to the lack of wear and tear. In the past 14 years, the value of 1969 Washington quarters has ranged widely, depending on their grade. For example, a coin graded at 64 on the Sheldon scale, which ranges from 1 to 70, might only sell for around $6 or $10. But, as the grade climbs, so does the price. Coins graded at 65, 66, or 67 often sell for hundreds of dollars. In fact, in recent auctions, some of these coins have sold for well over $1,000. But it doesn't stop there. When you get into the higher grades, like 67 plus, the value of the 1969 Washington Quarter can shoot up dramatically. A coin in this top-tier condition, essentially flawless, can go for thousands of dollars. In 2021, a 1969 Washington Quarter with a grade of 67 plus fetched a staggering $5,906 at auction. That's a far cry from the face value of 25 cents, and it shows how much the coin's condition, rarity, and the interest of collectors can impact its price. Another factor that can affect the value of a coin like this is any potential minting errors. Coins with errors, such as double strikes, die cracks, or misaligned dies, tend to attract premium prices. If you're lucky enough to find a 1969 Washington Quarter with one of these rare minting mistakes, its value could increase even further. That's why coin collectors are always on the lookout for these potential errors, as they can turn an ordinary quarter into something truly valuable. When you think of valuable coins, the 1967 Washington Quarter might not be the first one to come to mind. But if you're a coin collector, you might be surprised to hear that this seemingly ordinary quarter has recently sold for an impressive $15,500. So, what makes this coin so valuable? Let's dive into the history, unique features, and the errors that have led to this coin's impressive value. Now, let's get into the specifics of the 1967 Washington Quarter that makes it stand out. One of the key things collectors look for in any coin is its mint mark, which indicates where it was made. Most coins have a mint mark, either an D for Denver or an S for San Francisco. However, the 1967 Washington Quarter with no mint mark is particularly interesting. It was struck in Philadelphia, and it's rarer than you might think. While most quarters were made at the other mints, this one was produced in the Philadelphia Mint, where many of the coins were minted without a mint mark during this period. So, why does this matter? Coins with no mint mark, especially from specific years like 1967, are highly collectible. The rarity of this particular issue, combined with its historical significance as part of the transition from silver to copper-nickel, makes it a standout piece for collectors. These factors contribute to the high value of the coin, and recently, a 1967 Washington Quarter with no mint mark sold for an astonishing $15,500. But the value doesn't end there. As with many coins, errors can drive up prices even further. Washington quarters with minting flaws, such as double strikes, die cracks, or misaligned dies, can fetch even higher prices at auction. The rarity of these errors adds another layer of intrigue and value to the coin. So, if you have a 1967 Washington Quarter lying around, it's worth checking for any of these mistakes. Even a small error could turn your coin into a big payday. Conclusion. So, there you have it. These 5 Washington Quarters, ranging from the 1983 P to the 1967 no mint mark, show just how much value can be hidden in what seems like a simple 25-cent piece. Whether it's the coin's condition, minting errors, or rarity, these quarters remind us that sometimes the most seemingly ordinary coins can fetch extraordinary prices. If you're a coin collector, keep your eyes peeled, your next big find might be worth much more than you think.